Welcome, Daleks, dinosaurs, aliens, cubes, and angels, to the 100th production of an Unearthly podcast. This time we are actually using our TARDIS to stream directly into the future. If Matt got the controls right, and I'm sure he has, we should be live on Thursday, April 2nd, 2015. Well, one assumes this is 2015, but it is always possible that someone crossed the streams, and we are speaking now to a very confused audience in the year 2115. Hello, future audience. How are things? Does Florida still exist? Unfortunately, we cannot read your comments, even though I'm sure that thousands of you are watching the stream in April of 2115. Our TARDIS only has power to transmit data in one direction, so as long as we're streaming, we cannot see your future comments. On to the introductions. I can safely say that while we are transmitting solely in one temporal direction, we do have hosts today scattered across space and time. I am Bill Sylvia, the Man in Black, and with me are Mad Matt Winchell.
Hello.
And Randy Ronson McCulloch.
Always a pleasure.
But that's not all. You see, since this is our 100th episode special, we thought we'd take a look back through time at our own beginnings.
Yes, in the beginning we were, as Top Gear likes to put it, ambitious but rubbish. We were using basic voice capture software, not really intended for what we were doing, and as a result, a lot of our earlier podcasts were, well, horrible.
Well, not even voice capture.
Sound was grainy.
Fraps.
I tried recording using Audacity. That's how rubbish we were. Our sound was grainy and scratchy. Whole chunks are even missing from our first episodes. And as we tried to piecemeal them together from multiple failed recordings, as I just mentioned.
Besides lacking an efficient system of piecing together, besides lacking an efficient system of piecing together our thoughts and ratings, much of what did wrap up our earliest episodes tended to be lost by said unreliable recording technology. So rather than stick with unreliable recordings, we've brought together some special guests for this evening. Thomas Fyrehart.
Hey guys.
And Flynn.
Hello.
As the latter two have not been with us for some time, I programmed the Subwave network to pick up their signals in 2013 and 2012, but it is entirely possible that I am rubbish as a programmer. Guys, want to tell our future audience how things are going and let those who don't know who you are?
Well.
Don't all go at once.
Well, things are good. I don't think there's anything people need to know about me. I have not been up to anything. This was my life, and then it was not, and now I am nothing. There we go.
The void.
Wow.
You know, we've been looking for what I've referred to as a new Flynn for 3 years now.
Really? Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
There's basically, since you've left, the podcast is kind of skewed because Matt, Bill, and myself tend to think along similar lines.
Ah.
You were our counterpoint. You were the devil's advocate.
The main thing at this point is that among the core four that are mainly the critical ones, we tend to have different areas of expertise, but that's pretty much the only difference. Otherwise, we do tend to have largely similar opinions. Fireheart, you been up to any projects lately?
Back when, I think it was before this started. It could have been after. Did we start in 2012?
2012, yeah.
2012, yeah.
Yeah. Since then, I'd pretty much been doing videos for a while, and then my family's computer kind of crapped out, and so for a while I just sort of didn't, and then started again using Google Hangouts to just do stuff, just so I could actually do anything.
Wow, so you're like the only person in existence to actually use Google Hangouts.
That's what everyone who uses Google Hangouts says. There's maybe 2 or 3 other tiny groups I know of.
Yeah, some other people I know use it as well and have used it with them, but I've also started up very recently, a few days ago really, started up a Game of Thrones podcast, which I had to initially change the name because I didn't realize that the name was taken, but now it's called The Podcast Without Banners. And pretty much we're just sort of talking about previous seasons, and then we'll probably be doing like what we do with this, where it's sort of an episode happens, we talk about it, kind of thing for season 5. The funny thing is I went about naming that the same way that this ended up being named, where I just kind of threw out the thing of Bill was looking for names, and I just remember going, well, an unearthly child is like the first Doctor Who thing, so an unearthly podcast? And he just kind of went with it.
And here we
Luckily,
are.
we
100
use Unearthly
episodes later.
Child podcast because that does exist.
Yeah, although I just did prep, I went back and listened to a few of the older podcasts.
You listened to how many times I said an unusual podcast because I'm
Yes,
rubbish
I
with names?
did.
That's like my old show Daikaiju Disaster Control. Half of its episodes I start off by saying welcome to Daikaiju Danger Control. Because apparently words spoken out loud at least are not my thing. I can write brilliantly, but don't ask me to read those words.
Which is why you're on a podcast.
That's half my problem too, which is why when I do reviews, I do cliff notes rather than actual paragraphs half the time.
Mm.
You might want to, just put the label down, Bill, and just underline it a few times so you know to read directly.
There you go.
But no, I've had my own issues in the last few years too. I lost my residence in 2013. Wound up drifting for a bit. Lived with a friend for about a year, and now I'm moved in with my girlfriend, who's our fourth normal person on the podcast. But she's at work at the moment, so.
Mm-hmm.
And for those for the guests and for those who are massive Flynn fans and haven't watched the podcast since 2012 or Fyrehart fans, I've pretty much ended my own video show. Although I do tend to eventually start something when I know I can keep the quality consistent. I've been pretty much doing my own blog at williamsylvia.net, or if you prefer, insomniatic.co.uk. They're the same site. Pretty much a variety of sci-fi, fantasy, and horror blog topics.
I've been still doing reviews for the most part, although I've been off of it for like 3 months because I wanted to break in January after all the holidays. Then February, just everything seemed to go wrong and everything got pushed back again, and I haven't filmed a review until last week.
That's fair. Your season breaks are normally like a week, and I always wonder why you don't take more time between them, just so that in case shit happens.
And then
so it's at least good sometimes to take a break.
Yeah, and then trying to get the recent review edited has been pushed back further and further because now I have a daily series where I talk about Ghost Rider comics.
And dealing with massive hardware failure on your part.
And that too, and
he had a video card that scrammed on him, and his monitor blew out last week.
Yeah, like literally 20 minutes before the podcast last week, also my monitor flakes out, goes black, and doesn't want to do anything. Tell it to reboot, it doesn't. It reboots for like a split second and went back again. It's like, no!
So, bad things happen in threes, so I'm waiting to see what else scrams on his computer.
Don't you dare.
Maybe the third one is all the various smaller problems that leave me functional but still annoyed at my computer.
My webcam kind of died on me, so is that number 3?
That might be number 3.
So that's already a small thing that's been tossed aside for now.
All right, so since we're broadcasting into the future, today we're not going to be doing any news and or full summaries. We're going to be doing something a little different. Among other issues, our first season of podcast lacked a decisive rating system or reliable recording technology. What we're doing today is giving our likes, dislikes, in this case, not singularly as a group, and then our individual final thoughts and ratings about each episode in Doctor Who Series 7A. We start with Stephen Moffat's Asylum of the Daleks, featuring the Daleks coercing the Doctor, Amy Pond, and Rory Williams into helping them destroy a planet deemed the Dalek Asylum, also featuring not quite Clara Oswald.
Not quite.
Well, I think the first thing to talk about, just in terms of positives,
pros.
visually, great episode.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I believe
this
this is. Oh, go ahead.
This is. I believe this is Nick Horan, right? He directed
Yes,
this. I believe.
this is
yeah.
one of the
Yeah.
episodes directed by Nick Curran, and
he's
he is brilliant visually.
yeah, he's really one of, if not the best director working with the show right now. And he just
actually he didn't do anything in series 8, and I'm not sure if there's a reason. All of his work was in series 6 and 7, I believe.
He might not have just been available.
I'm not sure if that was rotating directors or if that was because of taking 8 in a different direction.
Yeah, and I know. I know that
might also be because he was directing something else for another
Yeah,
series and
right. Well,
couldn't
that
reach.
would probably
I
be
do know
related to
that
rotating directors.
8
but yeah.
had a lot of new directors, like a lot of first-time directors for the show. So
Yes.
they might have been trying to pull in a lot of new talent.
Mm-hmm.
8 was pretty much. I think there was one returning director. I forget which episode he directed in series 8, but he was the one that did the Power of 3.
Yeah, but I remember it was also a big thing that they had 2 female directors as well, which is really important. Yeah.
Which was pretty big for the show, yes.
Yeah.
My only complaint about the directing was that it was a little male gazy, but not enough for it to actually be a serious complaint. But that was noticeable, particularly Clara and the doctor carrying Amy scene. But again, nothing to really merit, oh damn, this sucks type of deal. Just enough.
Actually, the doctor carrying Amy scene, that little bit after he blows up the Daleks, I quite like that. It goes on my list of doctor moments of awesome.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the male hero carrying the female victim thing is a very it's a classic trope.
Yeah, but when your main protagonist for the entire series is male,
then it's kind of
you're gonna
Which
get
is also
trope a few
arguable
times.
because the main companion, which in this case is Amy, is on even terms with the Doctor as both being the star. So it's more one star carrying the equal star.
Yeah.
And there's been plenty of times where she's had to carry him around, so...
And like I said, it's not enough that it was a huge complaint, just something I happened to notice.
I actually remember the first time I saw this, I think I either just kind of tuned out for most of it, or like I might have just not really cared too much or something like that. I thought it was pretty mediocre. But this time around, actually, like, as I was watching it and even when it was done, I was like, wow, this is way better than I remember it being.
Which is interesting. I remember I remember when we first did this, I was the one who was really passionately for the episode. Now, I'm not really big on it anymore, which is kind of funny. I mean, not that I don't like it, it's just, like...
Right, and I mean, that's also the thing about a new episode versus one that you've seen a couple times or you've had some distance from. Does anybody else have any positives they want to bring up? I do have a second choice thing I want to mention, but if anyone has other things...
Visually good,
well, I really like just like little moments between Amy and the Doctor, really. Like the fact that Amy registers something the Doctor says while he's just sort of dancing around about it, where the Doctor says alive, like the thing that turns people into essentially weapons to use can affect living or dead, and Amy's the one that picks up on that and realizes they're in a room with 4 dead people. And like the Doctor finally registers it just as it's about to happen. He's like, whoops.
Bugger.
That's kind of a typical Doctor absent-mindedness moment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Where he's thinking about something else, and it's like harking back to the first episode, Rose, where he's looking for a round spherical object, and Rose keeps trying to get his attention, trying to point at the wheel.
I'm sorry, I was listening for most of the sentence. Something actually caught my attention, caused me a space for half of that sentence. Could you say that one more time? No, not Randy. I mean the point itself.
Oh, the point. The Doctor missing the obvious as he's talking about how something down there is weaponizing things, even dead bodies.
Oh, okay.
And then he didn't realize that they were surrounded by like 4 dead bodies until he just kind of
yes, the living or dead scene.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Because, like, really, usually it'd be like the companion completely misses something and the doctor points it out. So when it's the reverse, it kind of
Yeah, and
makes
that is one thing I think particularly I can think of a few instances in New Who where they tend to do that, where the doctor is rambling on and the companion's the one actually paying attention to the surroundings.
Yeah.
Though that makes you wonder, how has he lived for 1,200 years?
Yeah. My second thing that I enjoyed about this episode is pretty much every time that Jenna Coleman is on screen is awesome.
Yeah.
She really stands out in this episode and makes a very good first impression.
Which they kind of needed to if they were going to bring her on as a regular.
Yeah.
Rose did not set a good first impression. I could not stand her in her titular episode.
I neither thought very highly or very lowly about Rose. She just kind of coasted the mill for me throughout.
She grew on me over the course of the first season, and then lost me over the course of the second.
And she completely lost me after the second.
She went up and down
back?
throughout the second season for me. As of Army of Ghosts, I thought she was amazing in that two-parter.
So, Asylum of the Daleks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we've done pros. We should probably move on to cons.
Yeah.
Well,
you know, even though I said that
I really
like,
think, you know, we were talking in the before we started recording, we were talking about how you can really look at season 6 was where Moffat really overexerted himself. You know, some of the episodes were shot in first drafts, and he wasn't taking a lot of time to edit. And so everything season 7 afterwards is kind of like an attempt to not do that again, to not overexert himself as much, which is why we had those big long breaks and so few episodes in 2013, or 2013. This is kind of like the first, we're still rushing things a bit, we're still a little sloppy, because there's a lot of sloppiness in this episode, particularly in the emotional groundings, in the Amy saying she's infernal, like this is a huge big thing that is kind of just dropped.
Yeah, that whole subplot, and that's part of that's a huge downside to the hyper compressed storytelling they've been trying to do, because all of their relationship problems started and ended all within the first 30 minutes of this episode.
It's not even the hyper compressed. I think it's that there are literally when he does hyper compressed well, it's that we have all of the parts of the story just very, very fast. We're able to get emotionally grounded. What's wrong here is we have missing parts. We have missing parts.
The thing is, he had 5 mini-sodes to lead up to this, and he only hinted at it in the last one.
Yeah,
with no lead up.
Yeah,
right. And those should have been part of the episode, but instead they were some separate thing. Like,
so it was kind of like, well, that happened. Another thing
that was my main issue of the episode, and also the fact that the whole big marketing about the past Daleks returning, and they pretty much showed up in a room and didn't work.
Right. Yeah, and that's only an issue. I mean, that's marketing is going to try to get you to watch the episode. Yeah, it's not a flying level at the episode. I just think obviously
but it was I mean, I feel like that was something to do with how the episode was written. It was written to include that room, and they should have done something with it.
They really should have done something.
I think it's a disappointment the first time around. Second time, I have issues with other things.
It still goes to me on my disappointment list. Just because the fact that they hyped all these Daleks in there and even the Daleks that should have been classic Daleks weren't. I think the special ward right before he found Clara, or whatever Clara's equivalent name was in this, should have been classic Daleks, even the one that spoke. And they were all new Daleks.
I mean, I think the reason it doesn't bother me as much is just that you hype the premise, every Dalek ever. That's not
to cut you off, we've got about 1 minute if anyone has any other cons.
But that's actually, it's just not a very interesting thing to me. Like, every Dalek ever. Okay, that means we have a Dalek that looks different than this Dalek. They still act the same. It's not really, except for just geeks of the show who just really like the old Daleks, which I do. You know, it's not really interesting from a narrative perspective at all. You know.
Yeah.
All right.
I would like to point out one thing really quick.
Okay.
In the original podcast, my main issue with this one was continuity and Scarrow and everything. Not an
Yeah.
issue for me anymore.
That's funny.
Day of the
Especially
Doctor
Yeah, like-
put all that in perspective for me, so I don't even
A
have
bit,
that on
yes.
the list.
All
But I
right.
still say that the plot was a little too loose.
All right. So, final thoughts. Anything you didn't get a chance to say. Your final thoughts on the episode, preferably in 60 seconds. We'll start with Randy.
Really? Me? I get to go first.
Yes, go.
For the first time in a year.
Go!
Awesome. Well, like I said, I watched this. My continuity with it previously is no longer an issue. However, it's still not my favorite episode, mostly due to the relationship issues and the underuse of their equipment. I would have to say that this is probably a mediocre episode at best. And I'll leave it at that.
Okay, Flynn.
Yeah, it's extraordinarily pretty and has a lot of really good stuff in it, particularly anything to do with Osgood. Or Oswald, whatever she goes by in this episode.
Oswin.
Oswald.
Oswin, yeah, whatever. Why do we have two characters? We have Clara, Osgood, whatever, and then we have a character that's actually named Osgood. Never mind. Anyway, it just doesn't have a lot of substance to it. It's doing a lot of cool things without any real grounding or purpose. It's, I think, one of the final signs we had of Moffat really not able to handle all his workload that we had in season 6. But it's just an overlay from that. I'd give it, very mediocre, basically.
Okay, Thomas, you're up next.
Yeah, like, I guess with this episode, it's like, even though I like it more than when I originally watched it, I would have to agree that it is still overall, it's like, well, that happened after you watch it. And really, and generally, it's really, for me, it was fine all the way up until the end, where it's basically the Daleks and then the Doctor chanting Doctor Who, where it's like, we get it. You don't have to.
I didn't even bring that up.
If they hadn't overdone that, then it probably would have been completely fine for me and passable. But even then, looking back, it's still a fairly mediocre episode.
All right, Matt.
Visually, yeah, really nice. Plot-wise, and expectation-wise, a little bit lower than I would have liked it. The plot was just kind of sloppy and needed a few more bits and pieces still attached in there. And there was a few things promised to us that we never really got, or at least it felt like we didn't get, like we were promised that we would. Overall, I don't hate it as much as I think I initially did, but I still find it very middle of the road.
For my own part, I'm mostly echoing what you guys said, but the script was kind of lazy in terms of being properly wrapped up, whereas the visuals were pretty much spectacular, with the exception of there were classic costumes that could have been used more often than they were. Otherwise, a fairly middle road episode. Which brings us to the ratings themselves, which would again start with Randy.
All right. Also, something new for me since I usually tail end this. Like I said, this is mediocre for me, so I'm going to give it a flat 3. That's actually up from my previous score of 2.5, one of the few recorded ratings that we had.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay,
I have to
Flynn?
agree. Just 3 out of 5.
All right,
Okay,
Thomas?
this also I think marks a first because Flynn and I just agreed on something.
And it was about an episode that you had a 2-hour-long argument about 3 years ago, if I recall.
Interesting what
Thomas?
3 years of perspective will do.
Yeah.
I think that was mainly on the Scarrow stuff.
Mostly.
Yeah.
All right, Thomas, what's your rating out of 5?
You can do half points, just no, like...
Yeah, we're avoiding quarters.
Yeah. Honestly,
So-
I'll just stick with the 3.5.
You said 3.5?
Yeah.
All right.
And Matt?
I'm pretty much at a 3.
I'm going to agree with most of you and go for a 3 for this episode, which gives us an average of 3. Wait, that's not right.
No, that's not. It's
3.15,
not.
I think.
Something's wrong with our averages.
Hang on, I can get it.
Okay, you got it?
I can fix it. It's just one field
yeah.
is off. 3.1.
Okay.
I was going to say, it either got to be a 3.10 or a 3.15, something like that.
Yeah, you two were added to a existing list.
Yeah.
And Bill forgot to update the field that
exactly.
includes your averages.
It was updating everyone who was in Series 4 prior to today. All right. So okay. Or were you going to be? Yeah, were you going to be moving on, or were you sticking with me? I'm not. We hadn't.
Yeah, I can do this.
Okay.
So now we're going to move on to a review of Dinosaurs on a Spaceship, which really needs no summary, as the title itself is pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah. I think the initial thing to say is that it's, even if we, I wasn't huge in the episode when I first saw it. I'm not huge on it now. It's like, it's hard to get that angry at an episode that just wears its heart in its sleeve like this. Like, it's Dinosaurs on a Spaceship. It does exactly, it knows what it is. It's stupid, frothy fun. I don't like
not
it.
Not as angry as I was when it came out. That's true.
Yeah. I think Cleopatra's.
I always thought you guys were too harsh on it.
Yeah. Yeah, really, the pro on this, this is what introduces us to Rory's father.
Yes.
Who I really wish had gotten introduced 2 seasons earlier.
Oh, yeah.
Because he was such a good character.
Yeah, he was a joy in this episode, and I think it was the way he was received in this episode that got him to return 2 episodes. Actually, no, because this episode was not aired by the time 2 episodes later was filmed, so never mind. But it was good.
I wish they'd introduced him back at the end of Series 5 at Amy and Rory's wedding.
He could have been at the stag party.
Yeah. It would have been. I would have loved to have seen him before this. I would have loved to have seen the Doctor take off with him on a series of adventures after this. I love his character.
Yeah.
Well, we know he took him back in time at some point because he sends postcards from Siluria.
Yes, he does.
That's right. He did take a temporary leave with him for a bit.
So he is a companion.
I would love to have seen those stories because I liked him. He was down to earth, yet was able to accept all of this with this. After the initial gibbering, he got to the point where it was just like, this is cool.
Watch 20 years from now when Big Finish gets the rights to do Matt Smith's Doctor. We're just going to have a whole series with Matt Smith and Rory's father.
Considering the fact that they just approved a unit story with Kate Stewart in it, seeing Matt Smith and Eccleston and Tennant era audios might actually be coming to fruition.
I think it's going to be Unit, then Torchwood, then Doctor Who in terms of rights.
They're going to be building to it.
Yeah. If I remember right, though, Kate Stewart told me in Big Finish because she's technically not a new series character because she debuted in Downtime. I think it's really her. Maybe the rights with her are really weird, so that's why they were able to get away with it. But yeah, you're right though.
But it's showing that they're giving ground
with this episode. Was that I enjoy. The Doctor had some really good lines. Unfortunately, I did not write any of them down, but I did really enjoy the Doctor in this episode.
Yeah.
You didn't get it because you're not lizards.
I generally like the fact that he's really happy that he has a gang.
In this episode. I speak dinosaur. Of course I speak dinosaur. That would have been perfect, considering the running gag they had with it.
He does, a season later, mention, I speak dinosaur, Clara.
Yeah, so it should have happened here.
Well, technically, how do you think they got the Triceratops running? It wasn't just all the ball.
I did like it's not Earth. It doesn't taste right. Everyone's just looking at him. You tasted the Earth?
Too metallic.
Yeah.
But yeah, as far as I'm concerned, it did exactly what it needed to do. It had a spaceship and it had dinosaurs on it. I mean, what else were you expecting from this episode?
I think I remember another pro that we had previously was the fact that the continuity with Nefertiti actually made sense because she apparently just sort of disappears out of history at the point that the doctor took her
where I
away.
got the inspiration for that
Yep.
thing.
Yeah.
Although that is a good segue into the cons for this episode, and it is about time to transfer over.
Yeah.
And that is the fact that the two characters that the Doctor just seems to grab out of nowhere, Nefertiti and the big game hunter, whose name I can't remember, are almost completely superfluous to the plot.
Yeah,
Pretty much.
John Riddle.
or the fact that she was mainly there so that a misogynist could talk her down and tame the feminist
Yeah.
going home and dating his wife instead.
I didn't like that.
Yeah, that the entire script would have been better had it just been Amy, Rory, and Brian.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Without the subplot of those two, you could have had a little time to expand on some of the other stuff.
Part of the whole, I think we were talking about this a bit before the podcast, but where this episode reaches the epitome of the hyper compressed episodes. There's those two. There's the comic relief robots. I think there's a few other things going on, and it gets very.
I'm kind of on the fence on whether the comedic robots are a pro or a con.
You know what?
They're very
I think
eye-rolly, but at the same time, they're very Douglas Adamsy.
Yeah, but you know what I would think that would have been another helpful fix is that if we got rid of the guy that's apparently controlling them and they were just on their own and they're just a hindrance to the Doctor and on their own, it would have made them a little bit more interesting and actually
get rid of the plot and add crazy robots.
Yeah, get rid of that whole useless plot with those particular three characters and just have these robots who are trying to run the ship despite the dinosaurs, and they are impeding the Doctor, and that's why we have to have this whole big part at the end where he has to get around the robots.
Speaking of getting rid of him, is anybody not bothered by the Doctor executing his prisoners?
Yeah, that's...
well, I think we were last time, but I think
we had some issues with that ending.
Yeah, I think overall I accept it now because it makes sense within the context of.
I accept it in terms of as a plot thing in general, but for the Doctor's personality, that's not something he would do.
Yeah,
ever.
Considering
I could see
what
Capaldi
happens,
doing it.
I could say Capaldi would be the one I don't have to. I'm not going to kill you, but I don't have to save you. That would be Capaldi.
I guess, considering what happens in the next episode, in retrospect, it does make sense, because at this point, he's been traveling on his own. It's established that he's been traveling on his own for varying lengths of time between
episodes,
journeys with Amy and Rory, so he'd be more susceptible to that, especially because the villain essentially commits genocide. So,
speaking of the villain, I don't think we got into this in the original, but is it me or is that villain just completely one-dimensional?
Yeah.
Very flimsy and one-dimensional, yes.
The dimension
which is
money.
furthermore reason to get rid of them.
And I think also last time we had we were a bit iffy on the line that almost kind of implies, well, not really, it's kind of blatant, that he's probably going to rape Nefertiti.
That was his plan.
Yeah. It's pretty obviously stated without flat out using the word.
And this is especially interesting in retrospect now, considering what that actor's gone on to do.
Yeah.
What is he doing
Really?
now?
Has he?
Oh, isn't that? He's the first Doctor now.
You mean considering he went on to play the Doctor? I thought you meant that actor has gone on to rape people since then. I was like, what?
No, I mean,
no, Bill.
No, Bill.
Bill.
I was like,
Bill.
Bill, focus.
That's the wording. That's what the wording led me to think that.
He's gone on to become the new version of the first Doctor himself.
Yeah.
Which kind of changes the outlook. It's like you're looking at a dark, evil first Doctor now. It changes how you look at that character. In retrospect, I bet they wish they'd never cast him in that role.
Well, no, because I mean, he played them both very differently, and he had been a villain in Harry Potter, so that's what people expected anyway.
A pseudo
But yeah,
villain.
I'm
And he
like,
was a
I see what
villain
you
in
mean.
Game of Thrones as well.
Like if Herndal had been a third Doctor villain or something, or fourth even.
Had just come off of acting a serial killer. You know, what if
Right.
Richard Herndal's previous role was Hannibal Lecter?
I need his liver with some father.
By the way, one negative thing that would have fit earlier in the conversation, but I didn't have time to bring it up. The Doctor choosing to bring a big game hunter so that they could preserve
Dinosaur.
the
Yeah.
inhabitants of the spaceship. When I
That's
want
a
to
jump
make
of
sure
logic.
people don't get shot, the first thing I do is bring a guy who likes to shoot everything he sees.
And the Silurian thing is kind of skimmed over now that I think about it. It's just kind of like,
skimmed over, but
oh,
at least
that's
it's
why
there to
there's-
explain the
My
dinosaurs.
brain is now
Yeah.
hurting because my thought is, what if he had chosen to bring Steve Irwin instead?
Crikey!
All right, I think that's a cue to move on to final thought.
Yeah.
Goodbye, Australian audience. Bye.
All right. So Randy,
All
your
right,
final
so I'm
thoughts
going to
on
start
dinosaurs
with
on a
Bill
spaceship.
for
Oh,
thought.
that's right. I forgot you're hosting this episode, this one, so it starts with me.
Sort of.
My final thoughts. I don't like this episode. It got too much going on, and only half of it has a point. It has a few good points, but not enough for me.
All right, Thomas.
Essentially, like I appreciate this for what it is just being essentially dumb fun. Which, when Doctor Who does that right, it's pretty enjoyable. There are a few moments that are like, wow, this is a bit like the implied rape, where it's a bit dark for the episode. That's trying to be dumb fun, but overall, I enjoyed it.
Flynn?
Okay. Like Asylum, this is another episode that doesn't have a lot of substance to it. It's just kind of very surface level. However, while Asylum was clearly trying to do more and failing, this one was just like, you know what, we're dinosaurs on a spaceship, we're fine with that. You know, if it were only for that, I'd probably give it like a 3.5 or something. But I do think stuff like Nefertiti and the kind of unfortunate things that there are some things in the episode that push it down for me, so I think I'm just going to go with a 2.5.
Well, we're not rating
We're not
yet.
giving
We're just
points
thought.
yet.
Yeah, we're still.
So just hold
right.
on.
First, final
Well,
thoughts.
you know, okay, yeah.
Just
Well,
hold on to that. Just remember
Spoiler
that.
alert.
Just remember that.
Back
Yeah.
Remember that.
yeah.
Matt.
Still, visually, I still find this a pretty fun episode. It's not perfect, but it's pretty good. It's better than some other things we'll see pretty soon, actually, in this particular season. And I didn't expect anything more than dumb fun, and I got mostly dumb fun when I first saw it, and have since. I've repeatedly seen it a couple times as well since then, so...
All right.
I think it did its job, and it didn't overexceed, but it didn't completely bottom out either. So
Okay.
it did what it did.
So, I want to hate this episode. I want to hate this episode so much.
And you did last time.
The plot is asinine. Most of the extra characters are superfluous. The villain is one-dimensional. But at the same time, Brian is such a wonderful character. He kind of shines a ray of light on this for me. I can't really tell whether I like it or hate it or both. So I'm going to go on to ratings while I ponder that out. Bill.
Okay. If not for Brian, I'd probably be giving this episode a 1.5. I'm going to give it a 2.
All right. Thomas?
Like, purely the fact that it embraces dumb fun and because of Brian, I'm probably going to actually give it a 4.
Okay. Flynn?
Yeah, as said before, this just, it's below average for me, so 2.5.
All right.
Just below.
And Matt?
If we cut out a couple of key things that went wrong in the basic idea of dumb fun, then this could have been above average, but as there was still some flaws, it just barely coasts on average, so 3.
3. Oh. You know, just because I'm giving it a 3.5, and that 0.5 is solely Brian.
And I can't
So that
blame you
gives
for
us an
that.
episode of 2.8.
Nope.
You still have
Oh,
to
we
update
didn't think we
properly.
only fixed it for the one?
Yep, I can hold on.
Okay,
I'll
let me
copy
make
it through.
You're going to copy it through? Okay. So it gives an episode a 3. Flat average rating, which... Well, actually, the closest thing we've done this season to that is Asylum of the Daleks with its 3.1.
Yeah,
Although
I'll
I think way back the core cast gave the Snowman a 3 average, so that would be its closest otherwise.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
Except for our
plunking
guests at the time.
I'll be plunking these in place of the original ratings later on, so they'll go on to the ranking sheet, and we'll actually get a score. So,
in the third episode, A Town Called Mercy, the Doctor finds an alien war criminal seeking to atone his crime as a physician for his crimes as a physician in the American West, while a man disfigured by him menaces the town for revenge until they both find their own version of peace. What do we like about A Town Called Mercy?
well,
pretty much everything, actually.
there are a lot of things I like about this episode.
There's a lot good and there's a lot bad, to be honest. But
one thing I liked here was the return of the Time War in its context, in it essentially being used as something quietly menacing the Doctor without it, I think, it being explicitly mentioned, but fans who had been familiar with it would know what was going on with him.
Yeah,
yes.
and
it's also foreshadowing for Day of the Doctor.
Yeah, it actually hadn't been brought up in a while. Which
they kept quiet about that most of the Matt Smith seasons.
Yeah, I think we heard about it briefly in the 5th series, and then we haven't really dealt with it since. And I could even be wrong about the 5th series. We might not have heard anything since End of Time.
No, it was
I'm trying to
mentioned
remember if the
in
Tesseract
Victory.
said anything about it, because I remember it kind of led that it was going to look like
that's
the
right.
Doctor.
It was also mentioned in The Doctor's Wife, because Fear
Oh,
Me,
yes,
I
yes,
killed
yes.
all of them. Yeah. So I guess it has been there, but very subtly.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Enough that it was hopeful that fans would be aware of it, but not enough where it was really used. Whereas here, in here it's a driving point of the plot, but you still don't need to have watched the entire Eccleston run to get the idea of what's going on either.
Yeah.
I like the basic concept of the episode. The whole, war, guy turned into basically a killing machine and going back to seek vengeance. And I liked the Wild West feel of the episode.
Which is far better than the previous attempt at it.
Yes, plus. I think they shot that in Spain, didn't they?
Something like that.
Yeah, a place where they do a lot of like spaghetti western shooting. So that town had been used as a western town before.
Yeah.
Another thing I liked about this episode was Amy had some very good scenes, both with the Doctor and with Jex. The you've been traveling on your own scene being one of, or on your own too long.
Yeah. I honestly, at this point, think that each Doctor should, at least each New Who Doctor, seems like they've had that moment and kind of need that moment. Where
Eccleston
they get
kind of started out with it.
Yeah.
And then Tennant had it near the end.
Yeah, Eccleston had been traveling on his own for 900 years. Well, that's how I understand it anyway. You can argue, but not right now.
Because, there's Eccleston has it. Tennant kind of has it twice, because there's the first time he meets Donna, and then again near the end of his run. And this is pretty much Matt Smith's. This season kind of has a few of those.
Wait, what are we... I'm sorry, I missed the initial context. What are we saying?
The moment where the Doctor has been traveling alone on it too much and become dark without a companion, essentially.
Okay.
becomes less
I
human.
was saying because because Matt Smith has had the moment where a companion has stopped him and said, "No, you're wrong. This is how it's done." Because that was the whole point of Beast Below. But yeah, what you guys are saying, yeah.
Yeah. Because like generally, like even the bit where it seems like the Doctor isn't like after the sort of Jack's comparing himself
Right.
to the Doctor, and that just sets the Doctor off. And he's like, even the fact that he's like, he doesn't say I am going to do something. He's like, I genuinely don't know. And you can tell that the way Matt Smith does it, it's very good in that you can't tell whether he's going to or not. Whereas something like Tennant, where when he points a gun at someone, it's essentially he knows there's either no ammo in it or it was just generally he throws it aside and it's just like I never would. And in this case,
except for his finale.
yeah, and then there's the bit where where and in this case, it's like the Doctor is scared because he genuinely doesn't know if he's going to do it or not, and then Amy talks him out of it.
Oh, we want to start talking.
I kind of forgot where we were. We were talking about.
We were talking about
We were
Godzilla.
talking about pros.
We were talking about pros. Okay, I honestly
Yeah.
forgot where in the episode discussion we were. So okay, what do we dislike about the episode?
Well,
This time, watching it for me, and I think this was a pro for me before and has become a con, Ben Browder. The guy playing the Marshal.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't notice before when I watched this how huge of a large ham he was in this.
Generally, that's what the Marshal is in a Western episode anyway.
Yeah.
Yes, but you've gone out of your way to hire an American to be an American Marshal, and yet he still has to put on that ham-fisted Texan accent that I accuse most British actors of acting.
Well, you kind of have
the-
to. It's practically a
it's the
spaghetti
British
western at this point.
Every British
Yeah.
actor doing America does a Texan or a New York accent. Every American actor trying to be Britain does a Cockney or a hybrid accent. We think the whole country is just that. But
Yes, but you would think an American could do an American accent.
yeah.
And instead, he goes into such a stereotype drawl that I was actually rolling my eyes at all of his scenes in this and was actually happy when he died.
I have to say,
I guess that's a negative to bring up. I didn't so much like that he died, but I didn't care that he died.
Yeah, I didn't really feel any real attachment to that character, so it didn't really affect me that much.
Yeah,
I'm a very visual stickler, and I will say that while the actual on-set visuals, the actual practical effects worked pretty well, there was more than a couple of actual special effects, and each and every one of them I groaned at because I could do that better in After Effects.
Speaking of
I remember
visuals,
you saying that last time.
I remembered something I've not brought up. The Star Trek alien makeup, where they're able to fool the cyborg by drawing a line on their face.
Yeah.
So yeah, basically they drew up all the townsfolk to look like Mike Tyson, and there they went.
I think, man, that's a fine thought.
I think that was a problem that some of you had last time, where it was generally, we'll put a line on his face. He's an alien.
I think Randy had mentioned that last time, and I think Matt had added the same complaint about the effects. Now that I remember.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I think one was the explosion in the
especially
background
the explosion.
behind
that was terrible.
Behind the buildings. Yeah. Which
I've done
I
so
didn't
many
really
explosions now for the last 3 years. You couldn't believe.
All right, so if we touch...
my big problem with this, I think this was an episode that at the time I enjoyed. Hold on, sorry, my phone just went off suddenly and I don't know why. That's weird.
Beep.
Anyway, So, my big problem with this is, it kind of, for me, this is the reason that Moffat essentially bringing back Gallifrey or bringing back the possibility of Gallifrey and Day of the Doctor is unquestionably a good thing. Because this episode is essentially, it's it's a metaphor for time war angst for the Doctor. It's an excuse to go, we're going to analyze the Doctor in terms of his angst with the time war. It's very good. It's Toby Whithouse. He's a good writer. It's very well constructed and all that. But it's like, there's nothing new here. There's no new story to be told. We've seen all of this before. And so, the reason Moffat brings back Gallifrey is to tell new stories. It's because we can see now with this episode, we've had enough of this. It's time for something new. Let's bring back Gallifrey. That's always where the episode stands for me. It's the ultimate sign of, now it's time for a change. We've had enough of this.
Well, and I think that might be part of it. That we didn't know watching it, but this was the episode. This was the death knell of time war angst. Mm-hmm. It was time to turn the clock back.
Every era has its episode where you can just sense it's time to move on. What's the one I always use? Image of the Fendal in Tom Baker, one of the last Gothic horror ones. It's not bad, but you just get the sense it's time to move on. And every era has an episode like this, and I think this is what that was for that particular time war angst.
All right, so time for final thoughts, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Randy, what are your final thoughts on Town Called Mercy?
Comparing to the episodes before, this actually is a bit of a bright light for me. It is one of the episodes that I actually tend to have a feel-good feel about it. I like a lot of the setting. I like most of the plot. I like a great deal about it, with only a couple of small drawbacks for me. So this one's kind of a win for me.
Okay, Flynn.
I'm just. It's good, but it's never it's never gonna inspire me all that. I think I'll. We're not doing ratings, right? We're just doing overall thoughts. Okay. I keep wanting to build to ratings. Okay. It's good, but again, it's just a little tiring. It's not bad, but it's nothing new. And if I'm going to watch a Time War Angst episode, I'm going to choose a better episode. It's my main thing.
Yeah. By the way, the reason, Flynn, that we do the ratings separate is the fact that we used to run them together, and we'd miss them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thomas.
In a way, I think I might have liked this more the first time I saw it, and now in retrospect, I still like certain parts of it, probably more so than the first time I saw it, but other bits just kind of bring it down a bit for me. So yeah, I'd say this is on the second, because this is literally the second time I've seen it, that this will have gone down a bit for me.
Okay. Matt?
The actual on-set direction for the most part seems alright, except for a few characters that we apparently are supposed to feel something for but don't, because we just really don't have enough time, or they were just didn't connect for whatever reason. Also, the on-set effects were actually really good. However, the after effects work that they did, I could have done better on my own free time. So it's kind of a mixed ball of some really good stuff and then a few other things that just make me sit back and groan.
Okay. My own thoughts is that this is an episode I actually do not really feel any differently about than before. This is an episode where after, going here and there and, various sci-fi things, or, take a step back and do a historical or a pseudo-historical, depending on how you prefer to refer to it, doesn't really do anything hugely wrong, although there are certainly criticizable parts, as we've mentioned. But generally, it's an episode that I enjoy, and it is my favorite out of the first 6 episodes of Series 7. Let's move on to ratings. So we'll go start with Randy again.
All right. Well, I believe I probably gave this a 4.5 last time. I do not have that on record. But I think Ben Browder's acting has dragged it down a little for me, so I'm going to say a flat 4.
Okay, Flynn?
Again, it's just not a special episode for me. I'm just going to give it a flat 3.
Okay, Thomas, what's your rating?
Well, I guess since it's worn on me a bit, and I don't really like it as much as I think I originally did, I think I'll just give it a 3.
3. Okay, and Matt?
If it wasn't for the groanable parts, this probably could have been easy a 4, but as it stands, still, it's just about a 3.5 for me.
Okay, on my own half, I'm going for a 4 with this episode. Not good enough for a 4.5, but still enjoyable enough to be above a 3.5 for me.
All right, that puts us at a 3.5 average.
Ooh.
So Matt wins
Actually,
the taco on that
that's
one.
one we could have done without the calculator.
Mm-hmm.
Or without Excel.
Matt wins the taco on that one.
Taco!
So that'll move us on to Power of 3.
Oh my.
The year-long invasion of the cubes.
I guess I'll start with the pros because I actually don't mind this one, surprisingly. I think it's let down by. Well, we'll get into that, but
We'll get into that.
I feel like there's a trend in Moffat because I've started to, it didn't happen a lot. Okay, when in a Davies series, there was always like an experimental episode before the big important episode. In Moffat, there's a trifle episode before the big important. There's In the Forest of the Night or Closing Time or those where it's just before we do something really big and dramatic. We're just gonna do a bit of a silly little fun little romp, and that's what this is. And it's like I don't hate it for some reason. There's a lot of things to make me hate it, and I can easily understand people not liking it. But it's different. It's not at all what Doctor Who usually does. Doctor Who probably shouldn't do it ever again, but I like that they did it once. It's a cute little, I don't know, I like it. It's a trifle of an episode, and I've always just kind of had a fondness for it.
I will say that I don't hate it either, but it had an interesting idea, but I think a lot of the execution went wrong somewhere, and we'll probably point out a few things about that. But some of the good things, in particular, we got Rory's dad back again, and he's always been entertaining anytime he's on screen.
I liked the way they were comparing life with the Doctor versus real life, and the pros and cons of keeping each.
Oh wait, no. I'll also say that I also liked the introduction of Kate Stewart.
Yes.
I
actually completely forgot this was her introduction.
Yeah, this is the first time Una is seen since if you count Martha, Journey's End, otherwise Stolen, otherwise Turn Left. Actually, no, because there's other units in Stolen Earth. But either way, this is the first time it's a major force, not including Martha, since pretty much the 80s.
Yeah,
no, Centauran. Unit was a big thing in the Centauran episode.
Yes,
4.
but I can't remember. Russell T Davies tended to write Unit as a joke.
I don't think so. Russell T Davies is a major Pertwee fan. I don't think he. No, it made him come up.
Maybe not
like
intentionally,
that,
but they tended to be the fall guys.
They tended to be the fall guys and almost the antagonists.
Well,
that's
kind of a little accurate to Pertwee. Like that's kind of what they were.
They show up in Aliens of London to almost immediately get killed by the Slovene. We don't see them again until I believe we see them briefly in the Christmas Invasion, but they don't really do anything. And then we see them again in the Series 3 finale, where they're basically working with the American president to upstage the Master, who then upstages them again. Basically, he wrote Torchwood as the competent ones and Unit as the not-so-competent ones.
I don't know if
Torchwood kind of became his new unit.
I think Unit and Torchwood are both been traditionally written to be incompetent.
Well, I meant Torchwood
think about the episode we reviewed a few weeks ago.
What's that?
So think about the episode we reviewed a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
Cyberwoman.
Yeah, but mind you, when I referred to Torchwood, I meant Torchwood the
Torchwood
the
1
series.
specifically.
Or no, Torchwood as in the series Torchwood. They were seen more as good guys than Unit tended to look in the Davies era.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm. Whereas,
yeah. I mean,
But we're talking about
the main
anything
thing
but
I
this
remember,
episode right now.
the main thing I remember from the Poison Sky with Unit is Martha being part of them and them kind of falling victim to that whole, cloning Martha gimmick that the Centaurans were pulling and essentially losing.
Yeah,
Turn Left Unit was mainly used as a way for Rose to succeed in Donna's plot. And then of course, they kind of appear as Martha's superiors in the beginning of Stolen Earth.
telling her not to do the thing that she needed to do. So they don't really get a good light in the Davies era.
Well, I think they get about as good a light as, I mean, it's like Doctor Who is never going to give a great light to the military. The only reason Pertwee ever had a good light on the military was because we had recurring characters in there. But it's like, I don't think Unit's ever really been like, yay, good for all, outside of the Brigadier and maybe Benton or anything like that. It's always been kind of like that for me. I don't know.
But they seem to, in my mind at least, they seem to get a better showing in this episode.
They succeed more.
Yes, that would be a way of putting it. And I think we just used up all of our pro time on that debate.
You
we
did too long on that.
Schedule,
I was trying to
actually,
tell you out of it.
That's okay.
Okay.
But if we want to talk about cons, as the person who liked the episode, the ending sucked.
Oh god, that ending is such an anti-climax.
Yes.
Such an
it's not
ending.
It's not a good narrative. It's not a good narrative ending, and it's a terribly, ending on that cheesy narration on with the power of 3. Ha! Get it? Episode title. Get it? Get it?
Erin came home while I was watching this episode to review for this, and she sat down and looked at it, and it's like, and when the finale came up, she's like, "That's what I don't like about this episode. They drag it up to this. You're expecting a big payoff, and there's nothing."
Yeah.
I mean, there's value to a Shaggy Dog story, but it just doesn't seem like that's what this is going for. It feels unintentional rather than like, yes, we're going to deliberately do an anticlimax.
This comes off as broken and pesh.
The funny thing is, I remember being quite angry at this episode. All my dialogue was garbled in the end, in the actual thing, I think, when I tried watching it back. But yeah, I remember yelling like crazy because this just seems like such a pointless episode because nothing of consequence in, people, a lot of people on Earth die, but
or rendered unconscious.
The villain is just the villain is a villain of the week that hasn't been brought back since. Yeah. I mean,
that's what I mean about this being
a lead up to a grand confrontation with this villain in a later episode.
No, knowing Moffat, it's foreshadowing for the series 10 finale, but no one has that patience.
Well, again, though, that's what I say that this is a trifle.
Patience is for wimps, to quote this episode.
It's the issue with this episode is that it's what was the season 5 one? What was that called?
I don't know which one you're referring to.
Where he's the apartment one with James Corden.
The
Lodger.
Yes. This is is serving the same season function as the Lodger, but it's not nearly as Chris Chibnall is not Gareth Roberts. Gareth Roberts can do this really well.
This is not the Lodger. This is not Closing Time.
Yeah,
This is
there's also one thing. It's placing also does a terrible job. All of Series 6 and the first 2 episodes of Series 7 are all lightning paced, as many things as can happen at a time. And then this episode, let's sit on the couch and watch the Doctor have ADHD spasms while he plays.
That might be. You don't think that might be the point, though? That might be the point because. All of the previous episodes have been the Doctor. This is the one, the point of this episode is where you're going to spend time with, the Doctor staying place here. That might be the point, is that things are really, really slow
but
because through that.
It wasn't executed well.
Yeah, it was so poorly executed that we don't care.
You wind up sitting there going, what the hell, as the doctor's
Like-
acting like a hyperactive
Yeah.
6-year-old.
We
And then you
just did
finally
Closing
get into
Time
the
not that long
plot.
ago, and that was set in a single place where he pretty much stayed and lived at home, and it was performed a lot more successfully than this was.
Yeah.
Yes, it was.
Hell,
Like,
the Lodger took place in only like 3 places, and it was better than this.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
I
this.
think-
Go ahead.
Like if this was a
Uh,
Gareth Roberts episode, I think it'd be very good. But it
Yeah,
wasn't.
like-
So.
Yeah.
I think my main problem with this was I honestly would have been fine with it if there had never been a Monster of the Week and this was purely a should they or shouldn't they for Rory and Amy of just like dedicating the
episode of
entire
Friends.
episode. Yeah. Like, because I would have been fine with just an episode where they are mulling over the idea of will we leave the Doctor or not, because it's kind of, it's brought up and it's like interesting, because really, I don't think I've ever seen a companion really consider that. It's either they'll just suddenly leave, or they'll die, or, you know, if they leave, it's usually very sudden and not usually hinted at all that much. Here we have two
that's also
characters-
because this is the only companion where we've had the Doctor will drop you off for 6 months, go off for 50 years of adventures on his own, and then come back.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, literally, you look at how much Tennant, his Doctor, aged over the course of his seasons. He aged pretty much 1 year per season, and then we get
Even
to
if
this.
some of that was bullshit, because he definitely spent longer than a year with Martha.
But then you look back at how much Smith aged over the course of his episodes, and by the end of Series 6, he's over 400 years older. And then, of course, by the end of Series 7, he's freaking ancient.
Double again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
But yeah, like, if
anything else before final thoughts?
really, if this had, well, I guess I could technically count that as final thoughts, so I'll
Yeah.
probably just hold that back.
Okay.
So, final thoughts then?
Yeah, I'm gonna quickly say mine because I actually have to pick up my sister from work, so I have to quickly leave for like 5-10 minutes and then come back. So very
Okay.
quickly, my final thoughts. It's a trifle episode, meaning it's not going to amount to much. And I often enjoy that, but the issue with this is that it's just not as well written as those. It's not as competently done as like a Gareth Roberts episode. So, and also my rating, so I can quickly go, would be a 3.5. All right, I'll be right back. Sorry, guys.
Okay.
Okay.
At least we got it.
All right.
Okay.
So,
So, Rand, do you want to give? Wait, actually, did I
It's-
hosted this episode?
no, it's mine. So it's you
It's your
start,
turn.
Bill.
Okay. So it's me. Okay. Well, I really need to pay better attention. I'm as bad as the Doctor in Power of Three.
Ooh.
But yeah, this episode had a lot of things going poorly for it, especially where it is. The way the Doctor was written did not help, and the ending helped it least of all. Just the only thing I can really recommend about this episode is that whole, weighing the debate of will they stay or will they go, and it's not enough to carry 42 minutes.
No. Okay. So
And the return of Unit, which is a 5-second thing, pretty much.
Yeah.
So Thomas, your thought?
Well, like, yeah, pretty much. I think, as I said, if this was more about the Amy Rory plot, then I probably would have cared more. But the Monster of the Week aspect just kind of wrecked it because, and like again, it's a villain that's brought up and seems like it's like foreshadowing for a bigger event that just hasn't happened. And probably never will, for all we know. It was probably just dropped because the episode was probably received very poorly.
They could have called the villains the Greys because it's Gallifreyan fairy tale.
And just generally, this episode, I'm not as angry about it as I was the first time, but to me, this feels like a pointless episode.
All right, Matt.
Oh, generally pointless. Writing was pretty poor. The only standout things was the Pawns deciding whether or not to stick with the Doctor. Also, Rory's dad, as usual, is always entertaining, and we also got to see a decent, better look at Unit more recently. outside of that, everything else just was like, this sounds like a good idea, and then it just fell on its face and flailed on the ground.
Okay. I have a hard time even paying attention to this episode. I'm literally trying to watch this episode, and my attention, it's like my brain is trying to grab something else for me to look at.
Something else. Anything else.
Yeah, because it is so drawn out for the first part.
Look,
Then the action actually starts, and by that point, you've lost any vested interest in caring. And it builds itself up to a climax that should have been something, something a moment of awesome-esque, and instead you get hologram and the doctor finding an off button. It is such a disappointment of an episode throughout. Not even Brian, not even Unit can save it.
And they could have used the words reverse the polarity at the end, and they certainly did not.
No. So we will go on now to our ratings, and I will ask you, Bill.
Okay, this episode is another deuce for me.
Too flat.
It doesn't have enough horrible things about it to drop it to that one area, but it's definitely not a very good episode.
Okay. Thomas?
Well, I guess in a way, the best way to sum up this episode is an anticlimax and showing that while Matt Smith's Doctor could play childish very well, this was an example of why you shouldn't go too childish. So, honestly, I'm just going to give it a 1.
Oof.
Oh.
All right, Matt.
Really hated on. Other than the few little minor exceptions, this is a completely and totally skippable episode. Again, if it wasn't for Rory's dad and getting a nice, decent reintroduction to Unit, this is useless, pointless, garbage fluff. And it's kind of the fluff of the worst kind. I mean, we've had some fluff episodes, and they've been at least tried to be enjoyable. This was not enjoyable in the least bit. I can't in good conscience give it much more than a 1.5. It's by no means as insulting as a 1, but it's not as good as just the below average of a 2.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and also drop a deuce on this one, because there isn't really much else I can say on this episode. Brian's nice, Kate Stewart's nice, but I can't arguably have you subjected to watching the rest of the
if
episode.
Osgood had been introduced this episode instead of 6 episodes later, it might have been worth a 2.5.
But that will take the episode average with Flynn's 3.5 to 2.0. Making it the lowest that we've had thus far.
In this particular episode,
In
yes.
today, at least, yeah.
Yeah.
Not
And
the worst
that's-
episode of Series 7, but the worst episode we've rated in 7A, although the next one still has a chance, knowing some people's opinions.
Yeah. The only one lower than that this season is Cyberwoman. And
that wasn't written by Chibnall, was it? No. It was he wrote a lot in that show. I don't think he wrote that episode.
And let's see. The only episodes overall rated lower than that we've done, Kill the Moon.
Oh, that's terrible.
The Snowmen.
Meh.
The Name of the Doctor. And Journey to the Center of the TARDIS. And Thomas, you've just got introduced to the bottom tier of our ratings thus far.
There's also half of the things in our worst episode list we have not actually reviewed yet.
Yeah,
Which would be Terror of the Vervoids, The Gunfighters, and The Web Planet. So they're in that area as well.
There's pain waiting for us still. It needs to be sought out.
Yeah, it's we are going through and we're going to cover all the classic stuff eventually.
We
only do one episode
but...
a week though, and we cover all the new stuff. So, and we do take a break and do the occasional Big Finish audio or something like that.
Unless those listening choose to go on Patreon and donate enough that we start doing 2 episodes a week or such, which might have a different cast, but we would love that income and the opportunity to do that.
And
By all means,
shameless plug aside, in the Angels of Manhattan, the Doctor, River,
Angels Take Manhattan, isn't it?
I said of. I'm sorry.
Yes.
I wrote take, but I'm terrible at speaking out loud.
For once, it's not X of the Y, Bill.
You know what it is? Because I didn't realize there was a "the" in front of it. So I've thought of it as ATM this whole time until I realized there was a "the." So the "the" throws it off. In the Angels Take Manhattan, even, the Doctor, River, and Amy try to rescue Rory, who's been sent back to Depression-era Manhattan by the Weeping Angels. What do we like about this episode? Who wants to go first?
Not me.
All right, I'm going to start with something that we've talked about a bit earlier, which is that Nick Huron is a brilliant visual director. This is another episode where I love the way it was directed, the visuals, the tone, anything that the director would have had to direct, say, no pun intended, over was brilliant.
Visually, yes. I'll have to agree that visually this was a pretty good episode.
I don't remember how the soundtrack was in this episode.
It
honestly.
was pretty much the same as the rest of the soundtrack for the series. I didn't see anything
Nothing
overly
over the top, no.
No.
River's
mind you,
song, with the exception of 1 or 2 points, was normally pretty dormant compared to what she usually is, which is over top Mary Sue.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Professor Rivers
still
usually not as bad.
I still don't like her, but I
Still don't like her, but she was much tamer here,
yeah,
Yeah.
she's not,
which is a good thing.
because for once the season's not about her. I don't mind the Cherubim Angels, and I know that was a concept on the internet when they came out of a massive dislike for them. But technically the Weeping Angels are supposed to be a species, therefore they should be able to have children somehow.
I didn't like that they were essentially a teleporter.
That is more of a con and not something I'm going to talk about here.
Okay.
We're also, since we have a little time, we might want to kill until Flynn gets back, because I bet he has some pros for this episode.
True.
But
I have one other pro, by the way.
Yeah, go ahead, Bill, because I don't have a lot.
I
have a lot of con and not a lot of pro.
The acting in this episode, I cannot think of anything I would criticize about either the main cast or the supporting cast in the acting.
Other than a few
pretty
points
pretty much everyone did what they were given brilliantly.
Yeah.
And I actually do have a pro, because I do like the ending.
Yeah.
Although the ending could have been even better.
Everything after they fall off the building is fine with me. Everything before that, I'll wait till con.
Yeah, I would say that, in a way, yeah, like thinking over it, I would argue that this is probably my favorite so far. Like, I'd probably have to go back and watch them all to really make an opinion, but I'm pretty sure this would be sort of my favorite send-off for a companion that doesn't just sort of leave the TARDIS and actually
so your
essentially
favorite companion
dies.
departure?
Yeah.
Or at least the companion departure.
At least, yeah, like
favorite
if
forced
not,
companion departure.
Yeah.
Although I think I remember bitching at the time that it was more proof that Stephen Moffat didn't have the balls to kill a companion.
Technically, yes.
Yes, technically, he still hasn't, because Danny Pink doesn't count. He's an anti-companion, if anything.
Yes.
He chose not to travel in the TARDIS.
Yeah.
Well, sure, he killed the companion. He killed Rory and Rory and Rory and Rory
And Rory and Rory.
and
Oh
Clara,
wait, he kept coming back.
and
Never
Clara,
mind.
And Clara.
Yeah, and generally just how the Doctor reacts to it, like he's been with these companions so long that the despair of knowing that they are going to, like, go somewhere that he can't go back and get them is just heartbreaking.
It is, but
still call bollocks on that.
I think it's a little overdone, especially when you see his reaction in the Snowman. I thought that was absolutely overdone.
Yeah.
I only
Yeah.
can buy that one if I buy it along the lines of the straw that broke the camel's back.
I wasn't going to mention that part since we're not at cons yet, but yeah, the fact that he's so distraught that they're going to go and live a long and happy life without him is kind of cringeworthy.
Yeah, for me, that's kind of my issue with it. Is he should be so lucky that they had a
And hell, he even
happily
has the
ever after.
ability to go back in time to England in the 1930s and send them mail.
Yeah, no kidding, right? Or as the animated Batman keeps saying, "Go back and save her."
Now in the since we're still trying to stretch the prose a bit and we have some time, I'm going to say I do have a favorite scene in this episode, and that I'm going to go with the jumping off the roof scene.
Yeah.
I would agree with that, except it involves my biggest con of the episode.
Partially.
Literally.
I'm not sure what happened when I rewatched this episode. I don't think Netflix cut it out. I think my brain just refused to acknowledge that because I know it's there, but I don't remember seeing it when I rewatched the episode last.
It's not there. It doesn't exist.
Great, you suppressed it.
Ray, what are you thinking, Ray?
It's like I saw that aspect and my brain was like, nope, not seeing it.
How about you, Egon?
That's fine. My brain coped with it. I started mentally playing City of Love.
It's not there. La 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 la
All
la.
right, so I think we do need to move on to cons then, rather than just stalling and seeing when Flynn comes back. He can always backtrack.
Flynn can
if
add
he
his
needs
2
to.
cents in when he gets here. Yeah.
All right.
So since it's on topic and since it was my main con, yes, the Statue of Liberty Angel is a terrible thing about this episode.
It's absolutely horrible. Moffat had to
Detroit.
have gotten the idea while browsing Facebook.
Or it was probably all over Tumblr at the time, or
Something
Yeah.
like that. Some social media site obviously put this up as, Statue of Liberty Angel, and Moffat said, "I like that idea."
To which
I
the
think he
actual
might have been
fandom who
smoking pot
thinks
at the
sense
time.
went, "No, Moffat, stop!"
Yeah. It was a horrible concept. It does not match anything we know of what the Angels do. Of course, Moffat can't keep the Angels having the same powers from episode to episode.
So
yeah.
Yeah, and it's largely, to me, it basically ruins the entirety of this episode.
and it pretty much is the killing point for Angels because I don't think we've had Angels since then, have
Yeah,
We've had one angel in the snow, and that was essentially an excuse for hologram Doctor to feel up hologram Clara.
Yeah. Less talking about that, the better, because I know that hurts your brain. It's one of the reasons, by the way, Thomas, that Time of the Doctor got so low of a rating, is because Bill came to the realization that the first third of the episode, the Doctor and Clara, or at least the Doctor, are essentially naked.
No, they're both naked at that point because they're both
naked at that point.
Go to the church.
Yeah.
The clothes are only for the audience's point of view.
And that squicked the hell out of Bill.
Well, mainly that scene with the understanding that they were both naked.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Bill couldn't get over that, so it skewed the rating.
One con that I remember us kind of having back then, and that really it kind of bleeds into the previous episodes as well, is they try to play up the fact that Rory and Amy have aged to the point where Amy needs reading glasses. But makeup-wise, and that they don't really look all that much older.
Nope.
So, like, if they had like better makeup and maybe some gray hairs or white hairs going through,
yeah,
Amy,
even just a bit of crow's feet would have been nice.
Yeah.
Right.
And you can do that easily with makeup, and they didn't.
There's so many little easy visual cues they could have done with that.
There's also the fact that at that point they probably should have had phones from like 2035, and no one bothered to even try and guess what that would look like.
Well, other people were guessing what they were looking like, and they went in the wrong direction. Because you remember this was, actually,
I'm just saying. I'm just saying the 11th hour's second half is set in 2020. I think. The Power of Three is set in 2025, and this is after that. So something should look different.
Mm.
we should be seeing cyberware. Come on, damn it.
Upgrading.
But God, this episode just bothers me so bad. The Statue of Liberty Angel is, of course, the big elephant in the room, and the rest of the way the angels are played.
Big cherry on top that just topples the whole cake over.
Yeah,
Well,
the entire concept of fixed time bothers me too.
Yeah.
Speaking of time, yeah, there's a lot of issues with the way time is used in this episode. I mean, honestly,
doesn't make sense together.
Honestly, I mean, temporarily the angels make no sense to me anyway. But for the sake of right now, I'll understand them as a concept. But then there's the whole idea of, well, yeah,
too much time travel causing the TARDIS to have a hard time getting somewhere. What?
That the different types of paradoxes that seem to contradict each other. Yet there are no there are no Reapers or anything swooping in.
They're trying to fix things, yeah.
And this is the reason that the show invented the Time Lords in the first place. So, if they ever got this convoluted, they'd have someone to step in and go, stop that, all right. Right?
You
okay,
time
going this way, go.
There is no Gallifrey at this point.
And we're going to restart this area from the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Click. To which the aliens just look at the Gallifreyans and go, they won't understand us.
We never got to see Graham Chapman play a Time Lord.
The aliens just look at the Gallifreyans like, the audience isn't going to understand this. The Gallifreyans go, we don't get it. Let's start this over.
Let's see.
The detective character, I don't think I was really overly fond of him. Not the detective.
He was alright for a 2-minute character.
Yeah. But,
yeah,
he again was such a stereotype.
Well, that's what we're expecting here,
This really was Doctor Who attempts to do film noir, in a way.
And that also just went.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They've really kind of failed this season of trying to capture a genre. Because I had the same issue with Cold War, with them trying to do a Clancy-esque thriller and not really capturing the Clancy-esque war thriller on that.
But they did the Aliens pretty well.
They did. I will admit, okay, they did do Aliens pretty well. But
so they at least got what they know right. It's the problem that they wanted to also do other things that they really weren't prepared for.
Are you back with us verbally now, Flynn? Too?
Yes, I am.
Hello.
Do you have any quick pros on Angels Take Manhattan? We've already gone.
Just to cover, we basically talked about Nick Kieran again and the acting.
Yeah,
the main pros.
that's basically it.
Okay,
Yeah.
and then of course cons. We had the elephant in the room, the Statue of Liberty Angel, inconsistency at writing the Angels. I mentioned the fact that a lot of the characters seem kind of flat and one-dimensional, particularly the detective at the beginning, and I think the sub-villain too.
Yeah.
The bad guy was also kind of one-dimensional.
True.
He's pretty pointless and very quickly gotten rid of and not cared about.
We briefly mentioned the fact that the Doctor could have gone back to 1930s London and sent mail.
Yeah. Yeah, the whole temporal shenanigans didn't make a lot of sense in retrospect, too. I mean, if the timeline was that convoluted, he could have basically taken time and unraveled the knot and got everything set off so he could land again. And I consider his whole dramatic reaction to them basically having a happily ever after ending, even if it was in the past, to be a little over the top.
Yeah. I do remember. I remember liking. There's, and this is the one I haven't seen since I first saw it. So I'm really going on just memories here. But I do remember there being a scene. It was towards the end where he's reacting very over the top and kind of being really, really selfish about that. And River's purpose there is kind of snapping back, going, "No, don't be like that." And it just I remember liking that.
That's probably the scene where Amy's like. is my getting sent back by the Angels the best chance of being with him? And River's like, yes, and the doctor's like, no, you can't do it. Don't do it.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
especially looking in retrospect on where he went with it in the Snowman, it's just way over the top in my viewpoint at this point. Is there anything else you wanted to add, Flynn?
No.
We got
All
pretty.
right.
I don't have a lot. This is the one I haven't seen since I first saw it, so I'm only going by my memories of it then. I liked it, but I don't remember a lot about it.
Ooh.
All
Again,
right, so
this
anything
was
before we go
why
to
Flynn
final
and I
thoughts,
tended to
then?
be polar opposites. What's that?
Anything before we go to final thoughts, then?
No, I think I've said my piece. And if you wanted to hear more of me saying my piece, go back and watch the original
We're
podcast, part
we're
1
actually
and
ahead of
2.
time of we're
Part
actually
1 and
ahead of time
2.
enough that I wish I had written down my pros and cons for the snowmen like I was originally going to. All right, so final thoughts then, Randy first.
I hate this episode. I hate and despise this episode. There's only one episode in New Who I hate and despise worse than this one, and that's Journey. I literally, this episode fell apart to me 5 minutes into it when you meet the Statue of Liberty Angel, and it never got any better.
Nope.
Technically, every part after they fell off the building was okay. I thought was a little over the top, but okay. But it still doesn't save 40 odd minutes of ouch. And move on.
Okay. Flynn, any final thoughts?
No, like again, I don't have a lot of very clear memories. I do remember liking it a lot. I do remember, it's silly at times, it's inconsistent at times, but I do remember thinking it sold the ending really well, and that's really what matters for me. Is that I thought it was a good ending for them.
Yeah.
Okay. Thomas, what are your thoughts?
In a way, I guess my thoughts on this could be summed up in that it's the opposite of the Power of Three, where most of it's fairly middle of the road, kind of mediocre-ish.
And then the end just...
And then the ending saves it, rather than like with the Power of Three, where it's sort of interesting and then just
Terrible
ends.
ending.
Yeah, and then it just kind of ends on an anticlimax. Whereas this has... it's okay. I don't remember hating it, and I think I actually really liked it the first time I saw it. But thinking back on it, I didn't get a chance to rewatch all of it. So, but yeah, thinking about events of it, it's like I probably wouldn't enjoy it as much, but the ending I'd say would still hold up.
Okay, Matt.
The ending and the overall main cast acting are about the only good highlights of this. The majority of this is very lukewarm at best, absolute tripe at most peaks. It's just a hodgepodge hot mess that should have been walked away from and rewritten at least once or twice more. And the fact that we break almost every rule 5 minutes within starting the episode just doesn't help it at all either.
Okay. Well, I actually have a lot of the same opinion about this one that I do of Asylum of the Daleks. There are a few good points, most largely accreditable to Nick Huron, and quite a few down points, largely accreditable to Stephen Moffat, same as in Asylum. I generally feel like it's the same thing, altogether averaging toward a very middle of the road episode with just a lot of peaks and valleys rather than being consistent. Which moves us on to our ratings. Randy, what's your rating for Angels Take Manhattan?
1.5. Like I said, I can't. The only thing I hate worse than this is Journey.
Okay, Flynn.
I'm going to trust my memories of it and go with 4.
Okay. Thomas.
I think when I first saw it, I probably would have also said a 4, but thinking on it, I'll probably lower that to a 3.5.
Okay, 3.5. Matt?
I've seen this once at least, if not at least twice more since actually the original airing of it, and it has not gotten better with age for me. It's actually probably gotten even worse. It might have been originally more in the middle of the road, but as of right now, I honestly can't give it higher than a 2.
As I said, I feel largely the same way about this as I do with Asylum of the Daleks, so it's getting another 3.
Which makes it 2.8.
Yep. Which is on par, at least of Series 4 episodes, with Revenge of the Cybermen.
And puts it on par with Voyage of the Damned, Hyde, and the TV movie.
Oh. Wait, how did the TV movie get that high?
Hey, now there were some good highlights, like a really good doctor in that particular movie. Thank you very much.
So,
Acting. But anyway.
for the 5 episodes we've looked at, that puts with a 3.5 average, A Town Called Mercy on top. 3.1 average, Asylum of the Daleks next. Dinosaurs on a Spaceship just below that. Angels Take Manhattan slightly below that, and then significantly lower with a 2.0 is The Power of 3.
If you were wondering about the TV movie, Flynn, that got a 3, a 2.5, a 3, and a 2.5.
Yeah, it would get a 1 for me.
Ouch.
That is my least. No, I don't know. Warriors might be worse for me, but just from a personal level, that's one of my least favorite episodes.
I do think that Paul McGann's acting.
I like Paul McGann, but I don't think he's written it well at all, and I just don't like.
I think he acts it well. I personally admitted there were some horrible parts of the movie, but there were also a couple of really nice parts.
Yeah, there were a couple moments I remember liking, but just the whole thing just it's like I don't know.
And while I didn't like Eric Roberts' Master for the first part, I liked him in the second part.
See, and he's actually one of the few things I enjoy because he's so over the top. I just can't help but
that's what I mean.
For the
that's what
occasion.
I mean. The first part he's kind of wooden, but it's like the second part of it where he just basically, goes whole ham on it.
For the occasion, yeah.
Yeah, pretty much from that scene onwards, he's great. And that's the thing. He's mostly the internet hates him for that, and I'm personally like that. I find that to be part of the best part of that movie.
Yeah, I honestly don't find him that different on a cheese level than John Sims or Anthony Ainley.
Yeah.
Or even, I mean, at least at some of her more comedic moments, Michelle Gomez. Although she mainly focused on the villainy part so far.
So far.
Yeah, well, we'll see how she does in the beginning of Series 9.
Yeah.
She's apparently coming back.
Yep. She's in the opening 2-parter. So we are a little bit ahead of where I had intended to end, but probably not far enough to try squeeze another episode in anyway. So does anybody want to cover anything at the end of this 100th episode special?
You know something, Flynn? I think you were absent for our review of Angels Take Manhattan originally.
I think you might have been, yeah.
Yeah. I think you couldn't make it. I think, I remember.
Yeah, because it was Thomas and Lucas were listed as being there, but no ratings, of course.
Yeah, that might be, because I don't have a memory of really discussing it before.
Not sure if that's a good or a bad thing, because that episode did end up going on, I think, over 3 hours, so it might have gone on up to 4 with an extra point of view. It was one of the 2 episodes we uploaded in 2 parts to YouTube.
Yeah, that was
longer than 2 hours.
That was mostly me ranting on frickin' Statue of Liberty, Angel.
Well, there was a third, but that was Twitch's fault. I think the Twin Dilemma got the first 15 minutes cut into a separate episode.
So quickly, guys, since we have the moment, do you guys remember the 11th hour?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you remember it, could you give a rating on it? Because that's another missing episode.
4.5.
I'd say about a 3.
Of course, the half of that podcast was Victory of the Daleks, and that entire half got lost by Fraps.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's a 2.
Yeah,
So we'll be reviewing Victory of the Daleks in a few months.
Well, you got
Yeah.
a few extra opinions.
Yeah, well, I got opinion on the 11th hour, which is on our list again to do a review on, a take 2 on, but it's not slotted yet. So,
Well, and if we had done it, it probably would have been last season when we did endings and beginnings. So it's
yeah,
probably not...
well, that was when I first actually put this list together and noticed that the early parts were missing.
Right.
Like crap.
So we might as well put all 5 of our viewpoints on it. Pretty sure I had given that episode a 5 myself.
Okay. Yeah, I think I gave it a 5 as well. I know it's pretty much my favorite episode of that season. Matt, what about you? 11th hour.
11th hour? What I could recall of it, at least a 4.5.
Okay. Oops. All right, so I got that and done in retrospect too because we had time. Awesome. Bonus for you people listening.
Yep.
We're getting bonus episodes for you right now. Let's see, how much
what's our
time do we have
average on
recorded
that?
so far?
Give me a moment.
We're at an hour 41.
Oh, the chorus coming at an hour, so yeah, that's not gonna...
It's a 4.4 average on that.
Okay.
That's going to put it in our high rankings.
Yeah.
Not high, but fairly good.
Right.
That'll put it right up with Rise of the Cybermen, Age of Steel, and Destiny of the Doctor, Smoke and Mirrors. And just above the Three Doctors and just below the Invasion. So that means that now we have official ratings for pretty much everything that we've done.
Yep. Because the only other one we had no ratings for was Earthshock, which we did a re-review of. And if you two are interested in that, let me get the numbers from that.
Okay.
Earthshock ended up wrapping up with a 3.7 with our current series cast.
I'm so tempted to just give it a 1, but I have to acknowledge there is quality about it, so...
Well, the directing alone was worth it.
I'll give it a 1.5 for the directing.
For what, Earthshock?
Earthshock. I can't stand Earthshock.
Yeah.
It's the epitome of everything I think Doctor Who shouldn't be.
Ouch.
How about you, Thomas, if you remember it?
I remember, kind of liking it, but then the ending being a bit womp womp. So I think.
Wah, wah.
Which blue do you use, Randy?
Dark blue. Or the one that's just called blue. The one that's kind of
Gotcha.
TARDIS blue.
The one on the top row that I always forget about. Got you.
So I think I'd probably just give it a 2.
Okay.
I love in the commentary on that one, they point out how there's one scene where the script girl is in camera, and you can see her.
Really?
Yeah, just if you haven't ever listened to any of the Peter Davison, Janet Fielding, and Sarah Sutton audio commentaries, they're just hilarious because they're just casually kind of talking about it, and they point out a lot of flaws and all of that. But there's one scene where. And I can't remember where it is, but the script girl is in camera, and you can see her. And if you look for her, you can easily find her.
Probably
And that
points
lowers
out
the
in
average to a 3.14, and it stops me from being the low guy of the group. I had the lowest rating with a 3 before this, so.
So you're saying that the rating for Earthshock, where a highly intelligent kid dies is now the thing for pie.
Pretty much. It's just about pie.
When did we review that episode?
The
218.
first time?
Too bad.
Oh.
It would have been amusing.
Oh, yeah. If we had reviewed it on March 14.
Yes. Fail.
Mwah, mwah, mwah.
All right, so that causes us to run out of things to give ratings for. Thank you all for joining us for this special episode. If you enjoy an Unearthly podcast, if you enjoy, not unenjoy, please consider subscribing to our streams and recordings at Unearthly Podcast on Twitch, YouTube, and Mixcloud, and liking and following our social media profiles on YouTube and Twitter, where you can see announcements of special episodes like this one. If you want to help us improve the show, you can find us at patreon.com/unearthlypodcast. And of course, don't forget to join us this next Wednesday night at 11 Eastern, 10 Central, as we begin to examine the Doctor's greatest enemy with Terry Nation's The Daleks on April 8th.